And while there's great support for environmental protection and sustainability of resources in most faith traditions, to invest the entirety of one's spiritual, physical, and emotional energies into saving the planet as an end in itself is to miss the forest for the trees, so to speak. Most major faith traditions reject a single-minded regard for the self and the physical world. They recognize the need to reach within the self and to enjoy the physical world, but they also recognize that these are very human limitations rooted in the most basic of our emotions: fear. The fear of an uncertainty beyond what we can touch and feel, and the fear of being alone, a fear assuaged by exalting the self as source and object of love. This fear was the key motivating force in the creation of religion. The traditions and communities that grew from this overcoming fear inspired and informed countless generations. But like any good idea, these ideas can be twisted, perverted, and abused to serve personal agenda or national pride. What I seek to do with my new book, Good God, Faith for the Rest of Us, is to reclaim timeless values from the shackles of past bigotry and ignorance. I want folks to reconsider this essential wisdom, our collective spiritual inheritance, especially those who have too easily dismissed it as adolescents. And I want to rescue a reasonable, progressive, inclusive faith, a faith that most of us respect and cherish, from the extremes of fundamentalism and atheism celebrated and exploited by the 24/7 chum-seeking shark that is our media. I know this is a lofty, perhaps too idealistic goal, but as someone who has devoted his life to these values, this community, this awareness of something bigger and beyond, I can do nothing else. In Good God, I offer an approach I call Spirit at the Center. It's a grounded, interconnected spirituality that can function with or without a formal God concept. Spirit at the Center begins with an awareness of self and self in relation to the infinite. But this process can only reach ultimate fulfillment when we take an inspired, transformed self and act on our responsibility to others and the possibilities for the world. In the book, I discuss two radical insights that Judaism brought to the world. Though I speak most knowledgeably from Judaism, these ideals are universal and transcendent, speaking to the heart of all seekers. The first is found in three little Hebrew words so simple yet so powerful that sages decreed them to be the sum total of Jewish learning. Ve'ahavta l'reyecha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is more than mere empathy, walking a mile in another's shoes, or more appropriately for this community, walking a mile in another's sandals with socks. It's an intimate binding of the self to another, and a binding of the self to God through another. We cannot fully be ourselves, fully realize who we are meant to be, unless we reach beyond ourselves to another. And we cannot truly share love with another until we've learned to love ourselves. It's a bit of a paradox, a catch-22, this reciprocity, this simultaneity of love and relationship. But it is a mystery as close to us as the beat of our hearts and as expansive as the messianic dream for a perfected world. And what's more, the loving of another as ourselves is a bridge to the infinite. While we owe much for this world, this reality, our lives, more than we have the capacity to repay, we are required only to love each other. The infinite, the creator, or even God, if you will, models the very altruism, the very setting of priorities that we aspire to live out in our own lives. Our fate, our possibilities, our dreams are inextricably bound to those of others, and ultimately, to the infinite. For Judaism, true spirituality is found less on a misty mountaintop or the mystical reaches of the soul, and more in the caring gaze and the loving touch. And a second radical insight from Judaism, lacking in single-minded passions for self and nature, one that spoke to the ancients as clearly and incisively as it speaks to us still, we are accountable. This is not about authority or guilt or spiritual blackmail, as some who reject organized religion would characterize it. It's about an awareness that, yes, despite everything in the culture that says it's only about you, your dreams, your desires, your feelings, your comfort, there is much required from you and much expected. A remade, transformed self is wonderful, but only if you can use that changed self to improve the life of another. Protecting the environment in an age of industrial and corporate neglect is noble, but only as a means to securing a greater, more enduring wholeness that recognizes the seamlessness and unity of all with all and all with the one. Yet there are lessons to glean from some of the fad and fashion. While passing trends and novel approaches here in the none zone are not enough for a full, grounded spiritual life, they offer much for staid and static religious institutions to consider. We in the mainstream have become complacent and contented with the way things are. Rather than decry a doomsday demography, all of us in the belief biz need to look at these faith trends for what they can teach us. What do people want? What do they need from religious wisdom and ritual? How do we achieve a balance sensitive to the dynamism of culture without pandering to it, faithful to tradition without becoming paralyzed by it? So, other than venting and contemplating my navel this afternoon, why did I bring you, the caring, committed, and at least partially convinced, into this monologue that aspires to be a dialogue? Because I believe the secular but spiritual can find great comfort in timeless faith traditions and profound connection within established faith communities. Maybe we just have to ask. Not by bringing the good news to work or annoying our neighbors with door-to-door testimonials, but by modeling what we do, living out who we are, and expressing what we believe in timely and appropriate ways. Too often we err on the side of saying nothing when a waiting ear or willing heart would benefit from the gifts of our stories and our faith. I close with a sacred sentiment from an unexpected source, one of my favorite band of philosophers, the Grateful Dead. Rabbi Jerry Garcia teaches, once in a while you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. Sometimes the strangest of places are the most familiar, ground covered long ago but longing to be retread, an ancient voice speaking in a timeless tongue to a needful time. May all of us give voice to words and hand to deed, bringing light to corners of our world, awaiting warmth, illumination, and reconsideration of the power that lies in the possible. Can I get an amen? That wasn't in the text. Okay.